All right, welcome to our NCEA session, Ministering with Gen Z, what can happen when you train, mentor, and get out of the way. We have a great team that is here to kind of share some insights of our student ministry committee and the work that they've been doing here. So we will get started. So just a little overview of what we're going to do today. We're going to introduce ourselves, a little background on our ministry context here, how we started this student ministry program, and then some insights from our Gen Zers, from these seniors who are really involved in this program themselves. So I'm Miss Carrie White. I'm the Director of Campus Ministry here at St. Edward High School. I've been in my position here for 10 years. I grew up in Minnesota. I worked at parishes and high schools there for 6 years before I moved here. And I'm going to let the students who are the most important part of this presentation introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Emerson Gray. I'm a senior here at St. Ed's. I am the co-chair along with my fellow other co-chair, Richie Pokrivka, and I do other clubs such as Model United Nations, Mock Trial, and Academic Challenge.
Hi, I'm Adam Ocho. I'm the only junior of the group. I'm involved in cross-country, indoor track, and outdoor track. I'm on the IB Advisory Council here, as well as being involved with student ministers. And I am the at-large member of the council.
Hi, my name is Jack O'Brien. I'm a senior here at St. Ed's, and I am the executive team secretary. And along with that, I'm on the International Baccalaureate Program Advisory Council with Adam, the National Honor Society Executive Council. I'm in mock trial, and I'm also playing varsity lacrosse.
Hi, my name is Richie Pokrivka, and I'm a senior here at St. Edward High School, and I am an executive team co-chair with Emerson, and I do the performing arts here mainly, involved with the marching band, the awarding players, our theater program, on the choirs, and I also played basketball for a few years.
So we want to just share a little bit to give a little context into our school here. St. Ed's is an all-male Catholic high school founded by the Brothers of Holy Cross. We're in the Diocese of Cleveland. We're immediately west of Cleveland here in Ohio, pretty close to Lake Erie, actually. So we have most all of your high schools, a lot of different ways for students to be involved, a huge number of clubs, co-curricular activities, and a lot of obviously varsity sports and things as well. Our student ministry program is a co-curricular activity that students choose to be a part of when they are juniors and seniors. So it's really designed for our upperclassmen. So how did we get to this point, I think can be helpful to know, and Jack and Emerson are going to help talk about that.
All right.
Right.
Yeah.
So when the program first began, it began with about 15 students who mostly just focused on planning our school liturgies, and they would meet for about 30 minutes before school intermittently. But now, 10 years later, our program has grown and expanded impressively. This year we boast a total of 68 students who are split up into 6 different committees.
Yeah, so the next step in that was kind of evolving it into a class in an attempt to kind of give credit for participating in it. But the schedule and graduation requirements kind of made that hard. So it kind of went back to being like a club where students could get involved if they wanted to.
And so this year we added what we know as the executive committee. And this is designed in a sense to put the power in a sense into the students' hands, and so that they can take the lead and carry it on and then train the next generation of leaders.
Yeah, so this year we actually have 68 students, and we split that up into 6 different committees, which we're going to talk about. And those are prayer, liturgical planning, faith sharing, Holy Cross identities, media promotions, service outings, and retreats.
And we'll just highlight too, so the students, when they apply to serve as student ministers at the end of their sophomore and junior year. I go into their theology classes and invite them to submit a decently long application. We found if we make students kind of put some effort into it, their commitment is a little bit better. And we ask for the recommendations of their theology teachers to kind of verify, I guess, that these students are ones that would serve as effective student ministers. And then we created these 6 committees as kind of the core focus to meet the needs the best at our school here. We've tried this in different iterations where we've let the students define the committees. We've had up to 15 different committees some years, which is really, we found to be pretty unmanageable to have that many. So we settled on these 7. Right? 7?
Yeah.
6. I teach theology, I don't do math. So to help kind of the guys focus their work, and then the students we placed them into different committees over the summer. We have 2 summer retreats to help get ourselves ready to get a jump on programming and stuff for the school year. So I'm going to let these guys kind of take you through. There's a member of our executive committee in charge of, that's kind of the liaison for each of these different groups. So we're going to go through and just kind of share a little bit about what these committees are doing and how they're kind of affecting the work here at our school.
Okay, so the one that I'm in charge of is the prayer committee. Starting off in my freshman year, I began doing the morning prayer over our PA every morning. And I would get these prayers from the University of Notre Dame. They would send it out in an email every morning. But now, with this committee for prayer, we focus on how we can make prayer in the morning more interactive for the students and get them involved in it in a sense. And so we are now creating prayers. They create the prayers for the morning prayer every morning so that it's more focused towards what's going on in our school community, and the students feel invested in it in a sense.
So the group that I'm in charge of is liturgy and liturgical seasons. And basically I've been kind of helping set up Mass since my sophomore year, and I've been pretty involved in that. So my junior and senior year, we kind of got together and made this group of kids who will be able to kind of come down, help set up Mass and liturgy before and clean up after Mass. And along with that, outside of ordinary time, when we get into special celebrations in the church, we're kind of able to decorate the chapel and different areas of the school in ways that reflect the theme and celebration that's going on in the church.
Yeah, so I'm in charge of the service committee here at the Executive Council, and what we mainly focus on is trying to find certain ways we can reach out into our community, whether that be within our direct school community or around the greater Cleveland area. 2 of the other councils that we also have is the social media and then history of Holy Cross. And these 2 kind of work together in making an online presence for our Holy Cross history and our identity, as well as spreading information just about what the other communities are working on, as well as other school events that are happening within our community.
All right, so I oversee the retreats group in our student ministry program, which has definitely looked a lot different than other years due to the pandemic. This year, the group has been able to format and plan our freshman class retreats that has been held at the school, which gives the students the opportunity to go more in depth with our high school's mission and themes, our Holy Cross identity and ministry. The retreats group also planned and ran a successful prayer service for the student ministers. Are working on creating a 60-minute mini retreat that we can do after school. In a COVID-free year, the retreats group usually plans and organizes the middle school retreats. We go out to other schools in the area and plan those and provide them for students. And they also plan retreats for students in our school, like the sophomore service trips that we have here, other student ministry retreats, and a servant leadership retreat for freshmen and sophomores that students can attend to become the servant leaders of our community.
So we do want to take just a minute to share about how to get students involved, particularly in our student ministry activities, but in faith in general. So I asked these guys to share a little bit about how they have come to be involved even throughout their 4 years, but especially as they've been drawn to this executive council that we're starting.
All right, so I got involved in the student ministry work earlier than most kids at St. Ed's, starting out with student ministry service trips during my freshman year. I still remember my first trip. I started off my day kind of poorly. I wasn't prepared for classes, needed money for lunch. I was talking to one of my friends who at the time was a senior student minister. I was telling him about the rough start to my day, and he asked me if I wanted to go pallbearing with him. As a freshman, I wasn't quite sure what pallbearing was, but when he explained that I'd be getting out of class and a free lunch, I couldn't say no. So going into the experience, I obviously just wanted to get out of class and lunch, but after the fact, I felt great about helping the family, being there representing the school and community in a good way. I was eager to do more service and to help others, and of course, I was always excited to do it alongside friends. I received another opportunity later in the year to help with a middle school confirmation retreat. With two younger siblings, I've always loved to work with kids, so when I was asked to lead the retreat with some friends, I was thrilled. Without encouragement from my peers, I probably wouldn't have considered taking these opportunities. Our generation thrives by working with one another, so it's important to find those that can help spread your programs like wildfires.
So funny enough, just as Richie was recruited by an upperclassman, that same day when he was recruited, he came and found me and recruited me. So we both attended that same pallbearing experience. And likewise, I was motivated by the notion of leaving school. And to be honest, when we began the pallbearing experience, I was quite nervous because I was a rather small freshman. And despite this, the seniors who were present helped me through it. Our generation is motivated by our peers. We trust our friends. And thus it is much easier for a friend to convince us to do service than an adult is. Additionally, I had already been working with Miss White with the morning prayer, and I also then felt comfortable going on service experiences that she was leading. Another aspect of our generation is that we struggle with relating to adults sometimes, and that is why student ministry programs need adults that not only we can trust, but we can relate to. The first service I did with Miss White was incentivized with food and getting out of a couple classes that day, and these incentives get our generation to participate, and then that opens us up to the idea of service.
So my story ends somewhat the same as Richie's and Emerson's, with the student kind of getting me involved, but it begins a lot differently. I came out of freshman year, going into sophomore year, and Miss White came up to me, and she was like, "Hey, you should come help set up mass." I was like, maybe, I don't know. That's not really like cool or whatever. As a freshman and sophomore, that's all you can really think about. And so I thought about it over the summer, and I was like, I don't really know if I want to do this or not. And then an upperclassman, much like Richie and Emerson had happened to them, he came up to me and had been doing it since he was around my age and convinced me to come up and do it and just see what it was about. So I was like, okay, if this kid's doing it, nothing can't be too terrible. So I went and did it and fell in love with it immediately, and I've been able to kind of go along with it ever since. So just once again, being able to get involved and helping involve other students is something very crucial, because the teachers and people like Miss White can open the door, but sometimes it's the other students who really need to push you through it and get you really involved.
Yeah, so I'm a little different. I'm a little different as usual to these guys. I'm the only junior in this group of seniors, but I kind of got involved like on my own with the Labra ministry we have at here at St. Ed's. The Labra ministry we have is where we pack bags, and then we have a set route here in the greater Cleveland area where we go out and meet homeless people in their own spaces, where they call home. And it was just a really eye-opening experience for me. I went out for the first time this summer following my 8th grade year, going into my freshman year at St. Ed's. And I went out with one of our freshman religion teachers, our librarian, and one of our English teachers. And what happened that night really impacted me and what I was going to do at St. Ed's. And I knew from that day on, like, service and being part of faith sharing and servant leadership at St. Edward High School, that was going to be what I mainly focused on. And so I kept doing Labra throughout my freshman and sophomore year, and my mom made all this comment all this time, and it was actually quite funny because the student ministers here at St. Ed's is only for juniors and seniors. And she's like, "Are you in that? Like, you should be in that." I'm like, "Mom, it's only for juniors and seniors. Like, I can't do it yet." But it was not like it wasn't a thought for me. I just knew I was going to be a part of this program.
So I'm pretty lucky to have these guys that are willing to kind of do some of this stuff, right? And we heard them say one of the big things that got them involved was an invitation from another student. A lot of times older students, so they're current student ministers that reach out to these guys to get them involved when they were younger, right? So some of that invitation stuff has been building and working on itself. Food is another big one. There's very few things I do where I don't have snacks or food involved for the students. It's a little bit harder this year, particularly to provide lunch because with the COVID protocols and everything being individually wrapped. But I think that's a really important part. And some of it like happens naturally when we go pallbearing to serve families at funerals that don't have family members that can carry the casket. It typically bleeds into our lunch period, so it seemed only fair that I would provide them a way to eat, which is kind of how that came about. But then to really try and have these active things that students feel like they are creating and contributing themselves, I've found has been really important. I don't set most of the projects or any of the projects really for the kids. They're creating and coming up with these ideas themselves. So one thing that we've really kind of focused on are different things to do during Lent. And each group kind of took their own committee and tried to create a Lenten a specific thing to do during Lent. And that was kind of a charge that I gave them, but I think is also a way to help focus and create some specific things for their group. So we just wanted to share a little bit about what that is looking like here for us and what these students have come up with as kind of an example of how the student minister committees are working within our group and our school.
Okay, so the social media group has been working on what we call the Lenten prayer book. And so for every day, from the beginning of Lent until the end of Lent, there were scripture passages that were put into a book, for instance. And we asked people throughout the school to write a reflection on that specific scripture passage and just kind of relate it back to not only the school and our lives, but also Lent and what we can do throughout Lent. And so this just serves as a way for kids to, log onto the book every day if they want and read the scripture passage and the reflection for that day.
So a group that I help out a lot is the Faith Sharing Committee. And if you want to go look at their Twitter, it's right there in the parentheses at the end, at ministry_SEHS. Basically what they're doing for Lent is they're kind of capturing videos of students, including me. I actually was able to kind of give a reflection, and each student kind of reflects on a different aspect of Lent and why that aspect's so important in relation to themselves, their community, and the school as a whole. So it's a pretty cool way to kind of get involved with other students over something such as social media.
So the next one is the Friday morning Lenten prayer service. This was started by the prayer group. And so what they did is they wanted to have a morning prayer before school every Friday during the month of Lent. And so it starts at 7:30, and they give kids some time before that just for some silent reflection. And then they play some very instrumental music. And they will do a Lectio Divina. So they'll read a scripture passage to start, and then they'll give the kids some time to reflect on a word or phrase that stands out to them. And then they'll read it again. And the second time after they read it, they will think about what that word or phrase means to them. And the third time that they read it, after that, they will give the kids time to think about what it is that God is asking them to change in their lives using those words. So they do that every Friday throughout the month of Lent.
So for the retreats group, we're doing a Lenten afternoon of reflection. We're going to be focusing on the 3 pillars of Lent, which is prayer, fasting, and almsgiving. Really just try to get the students into the mindset of Lent, into the mindset of sacrifice, preparing for Jesus' coming. And right now, you're seeing some specifics on what that retreat is going to look like. A lot of interactive things that students can write down individually, and just also be together and experience this immersing into the Lenten season.
So for the service group, as well as the Holy Cross history and charisms, this is our Twitter up here. You can see it. The link is right below. They are working on sending out continuous and frequent engagement on social media, specifically what we call Guide to Lent. And each day they send out a new point of like a little quote or a little thing to do around your house or in your community each day to better prepare yourself for the resurrection. And the service group is also working on a Lenten toy drive, working with the Cleveland Clinic to provide the materials necessary for people who come into the hospital and necessarily don't have the means or were prepared to stay in the hospital for a long time. You know, some people just come in, they don't really know what's wrong with them, and then they have to stay in the hospital for weeks at a time. So we're beginning to collect toys for kids who have terminal illnesses and need to stay in the hospital for a long time, clothes for people that just weren't prepared to stay in the hospital for an extended period, and that other amenities like that.
So the liturgy committee, and I have been working for each week of Lent to come up with a reflection question for a piece of one of the Gospels, or something that kind of fits into that week of Lent and fits into the message of Lent as a whole. And it's kind of our job to get it out to the theology classes of our school, who then take some time in the beginning of one of their classes early on in the week to reflect and read over that passage. And at that point, then they're able to post their reflections on a Post-it board, or on a big whiteboard, so that they can kind of be collected over time, just to show that our whole community is reflecting on these together, and it's something that we can all do as the St. Edward community, which is one of the most important parts.
So I wanted to take just a little bit of time to hear, especially from these students, things that they have learned in the course of their ministry and insights in general that they have in working with this Gen Z. So I'm going to turn it over to them because I think I learn stuff from them every day, and I think their insights are really important for all of us to hear as we think about ministering with our students at our schools.
So a big thing about our generation is that we need to be engaged in order to take information in, even when we are dealing with something that we generally have an interest in. A big part of student ministry is the leader talking with the students or whoever they are guiding. And the first step to being able to guide our generation is by putting yourself on the same level as them. The easiest way you can do this is by talking with them and not at them. Preaching at our generation will not get you anywhere, sadly. But when you put yourself on the same level as us, we feel a level of respect, and we will return that to you. As I stated before, we need adults we can trust and relate to. Making conversation with us is the best way to do so. Once you have a rapport with the kids, then you can begin broaching the discussion of whatever your goal may be, whether it be confirmation, service, or a club.
All right, so as Emerson said, to take in information, our generation needs to be engaged. But how on earth do you engage them? I myself struggle with ADHD and have had difficulties focusing and staying engaged. However, I have also found at times that I have been able to become engaged in a topic or activity with like an intense focus that I have come to know as hyperfocus. I was curious about why I could focus so intently on artwork or a video game, but simply couldn't bring my mind to focus on a simple homework assignment. After doing some research, I've learned that hyperfocus is achieved through activities that bring a balance of personal interest, stimulation, and reward. I think it's really important for all of you to know this because everyone's brain kind of works in this way, and anyone can become engaged and self-motivated, which can be used to encourage the leadership and growth in your ministry. Connecting with those in our generation accumulates more interest, doing the job with them, having friends with them, reminding them of their small successes gives them the stimulation, the drive to keep working. One of the advantages of our ministry program are the acknowledgments of all the little successes, which drives our students to do more. And lastly, giving them a reward gives fulfillment of the work, makes it all of it worthwhile. These steps will not only help to engage more students, but will encourage leadership and growth in your ministry programs.
So as I kind of reflected on this question, I kind of found two lessons that I've really learned, and one is more directly towards student ministry, and the other is just kind of living out your faith as a whole as a student and member of Gen Z. And the one that's kind of related more to the student ministry program, other than what these guys have already covered, is that there's kind of a fine line between when you should like put people in groups with their friends and when they should be with people that they don't know as well necessarily. On that line, in my experience at least, is one that you kind of have to gauge based like on or situation by situation. If you know that there's a student that's very outgoing and he's willing to kind of talk to people that maybe he doesn't know or have as many similar interests with, putting him in another group could be beneficial to the other students that are working in student ministry because he can probably bring them out as well and kind of have them express themselves a little more and in ways that they're not really used to. That stepping out of the box is something that I feel that doesn't only apply to student ministry, but that skill kind of applies across all areas of what these students do. It's going to make them be a lot more open to engaging in other activities as well. And one of St. Ed's main goals is to cultivate the whole person, and I feel like having them step out of their comfort zone and being able to help them get involved in things outside of the normal is something that's very beneficial.
So I'm just going to wrap us up here. I think you can see just how insightful these guys are and the different things that we have learned. I'll say for me, especially this year, I was really intentional about making time in our meetings. So we meet once a week before school on Monday mornings with various levels of success at attendance. Attendance tends to be the best when I have food there. So that's something I have to keep in mind. It's just harder to do food this year, but we're making it work, right? But we start our meetings with about 8 to 10 minutes of Lexio, and I'm focusing on scripture passages that kind of look at leadership and people in the Bible who are called by God to lead, and kind of working through that as a way for students to kind of hopefully help see themselves in some of these scripture people, and to be able to reflect on different biblical ideas about leadership, which I think has been really important. And students are starting to use Lexio in other places. They've incorporated into the Lenten prayers that we're doing, and I've heard them talking about it with other people around. So I think just that repetition of being really consistent in doing that every week has helped a lot in kind of planting some of these seeds of prayer in these students. And then I have learn to be okay with failure in some sense, right? As students are thinking about projects, and they have to learn too what it takes to create something from start to finish, and stepping in when they need help, but trying not to take over, then recognizing the limitations the students are on, right? Undertaking that Lent project, the book was a big deal because it required upwards of 40 people to submit reflections, and so there's a limit in these involved students in the amount of time and things that they can do. So, and I was helping them kind of make sure everybody got the things submitted so that we could publish this book. I email it out to our community, and then it's posted on our website, so the larger alumni and anybody can see the different reflections if they would like to. And just trying to make ways for students to be involved, I think, is really critical. So letting them set that, letting them learn what they need to be able to do to accomplish that, kind of putting any big agendas aside, right? But knowing like there will be always students who come through, you know. Jack is in charge of getting the readers for Mass, and when we were getting ready for Ash Wednesday, we didn't have school the 4 school days leading up to Ash Wednesday. We ended up with a snow day. But I knew Jack was going to have those readers. I emailed him on Tuesday afternoon and was like, oh yeah, Jack, we need readers for Mass tomorrow. He's like, yeah, I got them. Right? So some of that's knowing the students will always be reliable, that will always are ready and engaged to do those things, I think is critically important too, right? I identified most of these students when they were freshmen and sophomores and started trying to subtly push them towards ministry experiences so that they would be student ministers. And I did that just by seeing them involved in different things and inviting them to do different service projects, especially as they were learning and growing. So I've really kind of, over the years, come to understand my role really as being somebody who walks with these guys and is trying to encourage and empower them to do ministry, because then they will encourage and empower peers and especially younger students. So with all of that, thank you for making the time to see our session today. You can see my contact information. Please feel free to email me at any time, especially if you're interested in seeing the application form that we use for student ministers or how we've described and set up the committees. I'm happy to share all of that. There is a Facebook group for campus ministers and theology teachers. If that is something you would like to be a part of, if you just search for it on Facebook, there are like 3 questions we ask you to answer to be admitted into that group. But that's been a really incredible resource in sharing ideas, especially as we've been trying to deal with remote learning and different things. You can follow me on Twitter. That's probably what I use most frequently. There's a lot of incredible Catholic educators that actually chat together every Saturday morning. It's 9 o'clock here on Eastern time, so it's 8 o'clock Central, and then earlier than that the farther away you get from the East Coast, I guess. Right, so that's something, if you search hashtag Catholic Ed Chat, that can be something to check out. You've probably heard of that in different places as this conference has gone on. And I am on Instagram. I don't use it very often, but if you want to see pictures of my cats, that could be a place to check. So thank you so much. We know there's a lot of incredible things at the NCEA session today, and I look forward to hopefully interacting with you throughout our conference.